What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And of course, we're at the end of the month, so it's about that time that we have a look at the tier list. Now, the tier list, honestly, I don't think it's going to get that much of a change up because there really hasn't been a ton that has released that, in my opinion, has really rivaled anything near the top of the tier list. But we're going to go through all of these new characters that have released throughout this month, including the new batch of characters that are about to drop, being Devon, Augur, and also the super evolution of Shanks. So let's go through all of this month's release and kind of just have a bit of a discussion about what we saw throughout the month. So the first character that is going to be on, or the new addition to this tier list here, for the new character that arrived was actually S-Snake. So S-Snake arrived as the Rumble banner that debuted right after Nustero and St. Peter. So a little bit awkward about S-Snake is that she released with a terrible debut banner. Her debut banner was absolutely trash, and also releasing around the same time period in the middle of Super Sugafest exclusives made it relatively difficult for people to get their hands on this character, and I completely understand that. I didn't get this character, but at the same time, this character is actually surprisingly good. This is one of the key characters that is actually making these driven focus squads actually really annoying to actually go against. Obviously, her abilities in normal content, like, no one realistically cares, but it's more of the fact that her special is just so disruptive. You know, being able to remove 50% special CT to one debuff enemy. So if you can get her to launch first, you can just disengage the enemy debuff style characters, which is so good. And then also action binding two characters with the highest attack, preventing them from doing damage to you. Of course, you know, action bind, a lot of characters have resistances against it, but it's still a really good effect. And then you can also inflict confusion to one enemy with high special CT, as well as inflicting some further CT speed down. As I said, very disruptive character to use, and it's very good if you're running, you know, it says, you know, quick and fighter characters, but then also you can run stuff with driven, so you can use her in like a lot of different teams. I do think this is definitely one of the better Rumble characters that has released, but the problem is, as I said, her banner that she debuted with was so bad. There was no reason to pull for it because literally this was the only good character on the entire banner. Yes, you could get some of the older rare recruits and stuff, which are definitely nice to have, but the fact that they had 15 available legends on that banner, 3 of those 15 were being the Rumble legends, 2 of those 3 were not really that desirable at all. So only having one highlight character out of the whole Sugafest just made her a character that not a lot of people got their hands on. But I do think in Rumble sense, she is very good. Now we move on to the Super Sugafest exclusives. So we move on to the top man Warcury. This guy's pretty interesting. You know, in terms of his normal abilities, he's just fine. That's just the main issue that we kind of see with these 5 elder characters, is that injecting them into normal teams outside of their intended usage, you know, outside of the 5 elders, I do think it's going to be relatively tricky to do that, mainly because not only the cooldown is a bit of an issue, but also the fact that the special ability is like just okay. You know, you get the bind removal and you get a massive color affinity boost, and then also you can enhance your delayed conditional boost, which is like very, very specific. I like the effect at the end. If you have one of every color, you can get the increased damage taken guaranteed, but at the same time you need to have one of every color, which is not really that, you know, easy to do. You know, he does have the effect of this. Like, I do think that his EX super is not really that great. The only real use I see for him is just being used with the 5 elders. You know, if you have to deal with a ton of bind, he can enable you to do that. And if you are running the full 5 elder team, that increased damage taken is just going to give you even more damage. Unfortunately, I do think that these 5 elder characters are going to be diluting future Super Sugafest pools, because if you just don't have all of them, there isn't really much reason to just have one of them. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of a weird situation for these guys. Of course, in the sense of Rumble, that is a little bit different because you can inject them into a bunch of different Rumble teams, which does help. Of course, if you are predominantly running the 5 elders, they are pretty good, but you know, you can just put them in other teams, which definitely adds to the flexibility of them being used in Rumble. But in normal content, it's gonna be rough. So you have top man Warcury there. However, we move on to Mars, and I think Mars is definitely the highlight of these 5 elder characters, because he's one of these rare ones that I think could actually see some pretty decent play in normal content. He does have the ability to remove key chain debuffs. You get the guaranteed delay and you get the delayed condition conditional boost, and you get a full board of tandem slots, so that's all positive, as well as enhancing any color affinity by up to a 1.5 multiplier, which is just really sick, right? So I do think that he does have more use in normal content compared to a lot of the other 5 Elder characters. And then on top of that, if you do fulfill the condition of one of every color, a 3.0 chain boundary, like, you can't really say no to that either. Again, very difficult to apply, but this synergizes perfectly with the rest of his kit that is going on here. The fact that he can remove chain debuffs and then potentially give you a really good positive one is really nice to see. His super special is very good, but again, relatively tricky to activate because you need a really high conditional boost, or you need the overheal buff. Again, pretty difficult to get in most teams outside of course, the 5 Elder squad. I really wish that Warcury and Mars had better captain abilities, because in their current status, there's just not really much of a reason to use them as a captain. It's just such a real shame. Like, they didn't really get like a ton of cool utility, you know, unlike, you know, Nustro, for example, where even though, you know, he's not ideal to use in a lot of scenarios really, but at least in his captain ability, he does have the effect to remove 10 tones of bind if you fulfill the condition of 5 Elder, Celestial, or Navy. So I like that he has that, and of course the other two with Saturn and Peter also have some interesting utility in their kit. So I do think that there's a bit of a missed opportunity with these guys as captain abilities, which is a bit of a shame, but I do think that Marcus Mars is actually pretty solid overall. We move on to the Blackbeard Pirate part of the section here, where we get Vasco Shot. This was such a left field legend release during the Kizuna Clash recently. So the whole reason why he is designed the way that he is that he actually does work really well with versus Blackbeard. And I think versus Blackbeard may make a bit of a resurgence over the next month or so, as he'll have direct support to work with all of these brand new debuting Sugofest exclusive characters. So I like the fact that all of these characters, all of these Blackbeard Pirate characters have some kind of use as a captain. Where with this guy, if he's your captain, he can remove burn or poison, replacing it with an orb boost instead, as well as if you fulfill the tag condition, you can remove the pain debuff. Now it's kind of interesting because all of these debuffs of pain, poison, burn, they all can be like kind of mitigated via the ability of HP guard. And if I remember correctly, Blackbeard versus Blackbeard, that is, has the ability to enable HP guard in your team. So even though, you know, if you are going to be dealing with these debuffs specifically, you can just use versus Blackbeard and his mechanics to give you HP guard. So, you know, it's a bit of a weird situation there. But even still, this is a really good effect. Allows you to get around like a ton of different debuffs at the same time. Multipliers wise, obviously not the craziest, but it is what it is. The special ability is also kind of interesting as well, being able to do HP cuts, which makes sense with versus Blackbeard also predominantly focusing on HP cuts. Like every time another unit uses a special, you're continuously cutting your own HP to those low thresholds. And being at low HP with HP guard isn't really a big debuff because you can still fully abuse the Rush Sugo special of Blackbeard. This character also does allow you to get double stacking conditional boosts so long as you are fulfilling the condition, which is interesting. And then also with double special launch as his potential ability, being able to inflict the ignited status and then also get the conditional boost against those ignited enemies is quite strong. And then also will remove bind duration, rainbow shield, of course with double special. This becomes 6-turn removal of both of these effects, as well as providing color affinity and then potentially providing orb boost in the captain effect by removing one of those other debuffs. So it is all a little situational, and I guess you just kind of plug and play these Blackbeard Pirate characters depending on the content at hand. You've got the super special here, which can further reduce even more turns of bind and rainbow shield. One of the really nice effects here though is that it can be launched as a crewmate, or and the condition being at low HP, or having two of the following units. So meaning if you are ending up using like versus Blackbeard as your main headliner character, you're going to be at low HP thresholds very quickly. And the fact that they have the flexibility of launching the EX Super as a crewmate is a huge addition to not only this character, but also, I believe, Katarina Devon and also Van Augur have that effect as well. The effect here as well, enabling attack buffs to be enhanced twice and increases the effects by a 1.1 up to 6x, which versus Blackbeard does have the ability to provide you with a very substantial attack boost. So I do think that all of the effects here of Vasco Shot play in perfectly with what versus Blackbeard is trying to do. Extending this further to, we'll get to Blackbeard in just a second, but we have Katarina Devon. Katarina Devon, again, built very, very similarly here. If you have the Blackbeard Pirates, they get further buffs, and then if you're inflicted with paralysis from any type of ability, replaces that debuff with a 2.75 times attack boost. A little bit differently with Devon Augur with his special ability, or his captain ability, where he focuses on special reverse, he deals with special reverse, and then if another crewmate uses their special, a part of the Blackbeard Pirates, you get a chain multiplicative buff for 2 turns, which synergizes with what Vasco Shot does, Devon Augur does, sorry, with his special. So back to Katarina Devon, her special ability here reduces 7 turns of despair. It also gives a final tap buff, which could be kind of interesting if they plan to do even more Blackbeard Pirate characters moving forward, because, I mean, we don't have a final tap character in this, like, most recent batch, which could be kind of interesting if they do that, even though versus Blackbeard does have a rush that likes to be performed as the final tap in the chain. So this could help you buff the damage from the Rush Sugo special of Blackbeard, or if they bring out a new character in the future, that could also work, like, potentially if it's something like, where's Frankie? The Frankie that came out recently, where it's, like, based on X amount of damage from the previous Powerhouse characters. If they do that, but maybe, you know, something along those lines could actually work really, really well, which could enhance the damage of that final character. Katarina Devon continues on saying, where if you're at below 50% threshold, it will increase the conditional boost by 0.5x. And then if you have 3 or more Blackbeard Pirates, you get int territory, which works perfectly because all of these characters they've been releasing have been int characters versus Blackbeard is int. We have the new dual Blackbeard that came out, also int, so it all works quite well. And then you also have ignores debuff protection, and you get 2.25 times increased damage taken on the enemy, which is obviously really good too. And then you've got some utility in the EX Super here, or the super type, should I say. Devon Augur with his special ability gives you the ability to resist the special cooldown in his crewmate and then give cooldown back. He reduces chain debuffs and then gives you a chain boundary, so this is actually relatively similar to what we saw with Marcus Mars. Although it's interesting because, like, this special is actually better than Marcus Mars, even though he doesn't remove all the chain debuffs. He only removes the chain locks by 7, and it's not 10 turns, it's only 7 turns. He doesn't get rid of the chain, chain coefficient reduction, but still, getting that and then a 3-turn chain boundary is phenomenal. And then if you're below that half threshold, or you have the 3 or more Blackbeard Pirates, you get that advantageous class effects, which is really nice too, because this will just give you more damage so long as the enemy has that effect of being weak to the Powerhouse or the Shooter class. Furthermore, if you have the right tags, you can potentially switch your bottom left character with your captain for 3 turns, and then if you have 2 or less Blackbeard characters, it's only a 1-turn switch. So I do like that there is that option. If you have the tags, you can get the 3-turn switch, which you can also abuse to get around certain preemptive attacks on new stages. But even if that isn't the case, you can still get the switch for 1 turn, which can enable you to do really interesting things, switching certain characters to the captain, use their EX super or their super type or whatever it may be, and then you can switch them out of that position with the super type or the super class, whatever it may be. So I do like the synergies going on here with the Blackbeard Pirates, and it's very similar to like the 5 Elders, where they basically really want you to use these characters all together, which makes sense. But I do like the team building that they have going on here, especially if they release a wave of all of these characters and they're all Sugo Fest exclusives. You can kind of plug and play which ones you need at the right time. And I think if it's something akin to that, that will actually work quite well. Whereas the 5 Elders, you have the 5 and you basically need to run all of them for them to work effectively. You need 4 of them on the team pretty much to make them work properly in a normal team scenario. But, like, at least with these Blackbeard Pirates, you need 3 or more, right? Which is not that hard to do because you'll have, a captain, you'll have a friend captain, which could fulfill one of your roles as well, and then one other crewmate or one other sub, which means you have more than, or like half your team ready to go to do with whatever else you need. So I'd like the flexibility a bit more with what they're doing with the Blackbeard Pirates. Finally, before we actually get to the tier list, is we have Halloween Shanks. I know that there's some copers out here, and I will admit, yes, he is a better version from his base form, but you can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's still not a great unit overall, but yes, it is a better version of the unit. I like this effect here at the end in his captain ability, where if you perform barrier penetration, you can remove 1 turn of Rainbow Shield, 1 turn of Threshold. I get it, it's cool, but the rest of the kit is like, not really a big fan of that. And then the special ability, removing 2 turns of damage nullification, yes, I do like that. That is a nice touch. Obviously, it makes him a lot better and makes him be able to be used in certain scenarios where he normally wouldn't really be opted to be used. 2 turns of damage nullification, very rare for characters to have that, so it's nice that he does have it. But the rest of the special isn't really that great. I mean, you get the color affinity, you get the chain addition, which is like, okay. Obviously, you have the effect to make it last for up to 5 turns. And the fact that you do need 2 or more redhead pirates on the crew, like, I'm pretty sure someone mentioned this. I'm going to pull up a second tab here of the database. Like, if we bring up like a tag for the redhead pirates, right? Let's find it. Redhead pirates, int. Yeah, there's no other page. That's crazy. You know, it's wild, right? Because Halloween Shanks came out with the Halloween rare recruits of Ben Beckman and Yasop, right? Those characters don't have the Redhead Pirates tag. So again, it goes way back to just the fact that, you know, we've had this tag update since April of 2025. It is now almost November of 2025, and we have had no additional updates bringing old characters into the new with the tags that they require. The fact that they haven't done that makes these types of builds not work properly. It is ridiculous that they continue to do this. So these are the int characters you have at your disposal. Of course, Shanks is a little bit more flexible than that, even though he does want you to run predominantly int characters. Like, you can still run characters of other classes if you want. Like, he is still giving you like int, cerebral, and slasher. So yes, you could just go cerebral, slasher, and I mean, you still don't have a lot going for you. Yeah, okay, yeah. This is bad. They because like they're all Shanks. You can't run them. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what are they doing? I don't get it. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's a big problem. You don't need to fulfill this condition for him to work properly, but it's just something that I needed to point out. The super special has received a very nice upgrade, so I do like this, that he's a self-proccing defense down conditional booster now, albeit doesn't go through immunity, but it's still a nice touch. It's a nice addition for sure. So like Halloween Shanks, yeah, it's a 6+. It's a better version than the unit that we had before. But like, you're gonna be kidding yourself if you think this is gonna like automatically be a unit that everyone's gonna be using. Like, no, we're not saying that. Yes, it's a better unit, but it's still not a viable, good super evolution. Like, we want these characters to be amazing and be used on teams. This character is just not going to do that at all. So shout out to the Shanks fans that are, you know, hardcore glazers out there, but unfortunately Shanks is just not that guy. All right, so let's go ahead now and actually look at the actual tier list now. So as for this tier list, I have actually made only one major change, like in terms of a unit coming out and a unit coming in. Most of this tier list is like just shifting the same characters around in different positions. So look, it is what it is, but Treasure Cruise just don't release high-powered, amazing god-tier units really anymore. I mean, a lot of these units are very segregated into their own archetype, and not too many times they have like a generically good character that is just so busted OP that is really going to really shift up this tier list. I guess the next time we could potentially get that maybe is the half Annie, but I'm not expecting that to be the case. We're really hoping that the New Year's celebration at the end of the year is going to shake things up, because I mean, last year's New Year's celebration, I mean, to be honest, was pretty mid. You know, with the Strength Luffy, the Int Sabu, and the White Bean Ace, definitely not like a great celebration last year, so I'm really hoping that New Year's this year is going to be a lot better. So as for what we've done here with these top 20, I've actually taken Saturn off of the list, and I've put in Marcus Mars instead. Main reason for that is because, remember, this tier list is predominantly looking at the PvE against, like, regular Treasure Cruise content. We're not looking at the Pirate Rumble side of things, and in my opinion, I think Marcus Mars is the best of these units in normal content. Now, I guess you could probably make the argument that Nushjuro might be able to, you know, potentially make it onto that list as well, because of that bind removal in his captain ability, and his special ability providing like so many solo buffs to himself, like in Treasure Cruise mini boss, treasure map mini bosses, that Nushjuro captain and squad could actually work pretty well, I think. So there's definitely an argument made there. But in my opinion, I think that this guy's going to be really good, because you can run him on a lot of different teams, and he can provide you with a bunch of really powerful buffs too. So I do think that this guy's really, really strong. I'm a big fan of Mars's design. Now, we have Shanks versus Kid, and I do think Shanks versus Kid is relatively close to jumping out of the top 20, and it is such a shame because, like, Kid doesn't really have a lot going for him, mainly just because his versus effect is so hard to get in normal content. It's such a shame they have designed him in this way, because, like, Kid's special, Kid's captain, honestly is great. It's so good. His versus effect is good, but the versus effect condition is a little bit of a pain to get. Having to, I think it's, you have to consume, like, what is it? Let me just pull it up real quick. It's like 17 slots or whatever it is. Like, it's ridiculous, right? When you consume recovery, tandem bomb, super bomb in normal attacks by the crew, or and also like when you pass turns, totaling to 18, right? So of course, bomb and super bomb, you're not naturally going to really see them, so that doesn't really help you. But then recovery and tandem, you have to consume 18 recovery tandem slots or pass up to 18 turns. Like, it's really difficult to get to, especially when you have like this versus effect getting you HP guard. So being able to just be really flexible and just perform the HP guard whenever you want. You get the full board of orbs as well, and also increasing the effectiveness of those slots. Like, there's really a lot going for him. This effect is fantastic. Like, if this was the same condition as like Luffy versus Kaido, where I think it's like 7 or 8 for this would be amazing. It would be actually so busted, and it would make shooters a lot better, but it's unfortunate that he is designed the way that he is. And Shanks, on the other hand, he's basically only used in Super Boss Kizuna. That's basically the only real place you're going to be using him. He's not really that great in normal content, so it is what it is. Next, we've got Toki. I think a lot of people disagree with Toki being on the top 20, but Toki is just so flexible, and you can put her in a lot of different teams, and the 3.5 times attack and orb boost that she provides a lot of the time can be all that you need to just clear a lot of bosses in the game. The fact that you can also target those two characters and then making them immune to certain debuffs is also relatively strong. So you can make it in such a way where if you've got like really hardcore OP utility characters as captains, removing a bunch of different debuffs, as well as Toki making sure that those two characters are unaffected, and then those two characters receiving that attack and all boost, like you can get it in such a way where you can just basically make your captains immune and they get that attack and all boost, and then you can just clear final bosses with just their utility captains and the specials of those units alone. Like, you can just do that. Toki enables you to do some really crazy stuff. Also, the fact that it does counter Momo and Hiyori in this character means that this character gets access to pretty good supports as well. A lot of people do forget that. Next, we've got Cross Guild. I mean, if you're running a slasher or a driven focused team, Cross Guild are going to be fantastic for you. Set target status is one of the most busted damage dealing effects in the game. And then obviously they've got the orb boost or the chain boundary, depending on how deep you want to go into, you know, building the team around them. They're just a solid character overall. Also, it does count as Croc and Mihawk as well as Buggy, so they get access to really good supports too. We've got the Oiran Yamato. I think this character is still very good too. You can run, you know, your full free spirit or your cerebral squad, depending on what you want to do. Removing one debuff by 7 turns is obviously OP as hell. So I do like the design of Oiran Yamato, plus the Rush Sugo special works very well with a lot of the higher tier characters that you'll be seeing on this list as well, because there are certain characters you need to fulfill on your team to get that condition for her Rush to activate, and a lot of those like high tier characters are going to be the units that she actually needs to work with, so it can actually work very well in your favor. So that's why I've got these characters in my top 16 to 20. All these characters are great to have, obviously, and there's definitely characters that, you know, could definitely be on this list that are not on this list that are still very good. Just because they're not on here doesn't mean that they're not good legends. Like, heck, V1 Rayleigh is a good legend to have, but he's not like a top 20 legend character, you know what I mean? So just because they're not on this list doesn't necessarily mean that I think that they're bad by any stretch. So next on the list, we have the top 11 to 15, and I have made some slight changes here as well. So the Rocks Pirates were actually bumped down from the top 10, mainly just kind of like a preemptive thing, because I do believe the characters that are in the top 10 are going to be more valuable in this upcoming month compared to what Rocks Pirates have given us recently. But I digress. We'll get to Rocks Pirates anyways. But Int Sabo, just still a solid character. Whenever there's anything cerebral focused, he's going to be a god against that. Sai Luffy, and I think a lot of people probably don't really have this guy like probably in the high tiers anymore, but I mean, look, Sai Gear 5 Luffy is still a character that helps you clear a ton of content, specifically, obviously, looking at his 6-star version. The 6-star plus version of Luffy, unfortunately, was kind of like, at the time when it came out, was fantastic, but the utility that the 6-star version gives you is unparalleled, and there isn't really any characters in the game that can do what the Sai Gear 5 Luffy can do. So because of that, I think that he does still deserve to be on this list. We've got Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. This character is mainly focused on just doing damage, and they're very good at doing that, but they kind of lack in the utility department. And obviously the other downside to this character is it's a Luffy, a Zoro, and a Sanji, so you can't run any other Zoros or Sanjis or Luffys on your team. So those are really big drawbacks. Obviously, you get access to really good support, so there's that. But the huge drawback of not being able to run any Zoro and Sanjis or Luffys on this team with this character on your squad is a huge drawback. And the lack of utility, I think, is another major reason why I don't personally have them in the top 10. But they're still a really powerful unit to own overall. Rocks Pirates, I'm still a big fan of what they do. They have one of the best captain effects in the game in terms of raw damage. I think they can get up to like over an 8 times captain effect, which is just absurd if you're running characters that are striker and have the right tags. So like Rocks Pirates, I still think are one of the best legends in the game, but for this upcoming month, I don't think they're going to be used as much. And then with the Quick Luffy, I still think Quick Luffy's honestly pretty good. I like his design a lot, and his whole chain focused effect is really strong. I do think that Quick Luffy may actually be used in this upcoming month, especially if they're more focused on running powerhouse focused characters. Of course, you know, the Blackbeard Pirates are not necessarily going to work directly well with what Monkey D. Luffy is aiming to do, but, you know, just in terms of damage wise, maybe be able to put Luffy on some of those teams. We'll see what happens moving forward. I think all of these characters are exceptionally strong characters that you definitely want to have on your account, but depending on the content at hand, you may not need to use them all that often. All right, so now we're getting into the top 10. So this is where we've made a lot of changes actually. So we've got Int Luffy still in here. I think he's going to be very good this month, mainly focusing on powerhouse focused things, and also the fact that he is Int, and with what he does with his special, I think is going to synergize pretty well with some of the other Blackbeard pirate characters that come out this month. We've obviously got Blackbeard versus Law, and I think that this is the big character. Previously, they were in this bracket right here. I bumped them up into the top 10 because I think versus Blackbeard will make a resurgence in this upcoming month. He's going to be used probably a lot, and I think that if you have him, get him ready to go, because I think he's going to be a very nice unit to use to synergize very well with Van Augur, I was going to say Lafitte. We don't even know if there's going to be a Lafitte character coming out. Katarina Devon, Vasco Shot. Obviously, Vasco Shot being on the Kizuna banner makes him very hard to pull, but the fact that, you know, we have Katarina Devon, we've got Van Augur. These characters, people are going to pull for them, whether you like it or not, so we are probably expecting to use one of those as a friend captain for the upcoming content. We'll see what happens. We do have this Nami. I still regret to this day not being able to pull this Nami on release, because she's used a ton. Very good in Pyre Rumble. Of course, not a Pyre Rumble tier list, but she would be up there in a Pyre Rumble tier list as well. But obviously, Nami is just a phenomenal character. Really great design with what she's trying to do. I did bump Kizaru down. As much as I love this character, this might be my favorite Legend release of the entire year. But unfortunately, there haven't been too many circumstances where I've had to go out of my way to actually use him. So it is a bit of a shame overall, because on paper, he is god tier, like absolutely phenomenal. Like if we're just looking like on paper, he probably is a top 5 legend worthy character. But it's the fact that he just doesn't have many use cases compared to some other characters in the game, which is why I have bumped him down. Don't disregard anything though, I think he's fantastic, he's still one of my favorites, but it's just the fact that I think in terms of overall usage, you're probably not going to be using him as much as some other characters on this list. Then we have Goldie Roger. I think some may even have him in the top 5. I would not even really argue with you if they are in your top 5. Goldie Roger is just a phenomenal character for beginner players, very good for endgame players, good for EXP grinding, good utility, one-tap super tandem, hard to really argue with that. Roger is that guy. And then we get to the top 5, and Nami and Karina are finally breaking through. I mean, they just continuously see play every single treasure map. Almost, I mean, like, people will probably still use this character in Kizuna Clash if they get a chance to. The utility, the damage, obviously the damage is not like a huge factor with Nami and Karina, but the fact that they can provide you with some type of damage, whether it be attack boost, or boost, whatever it may be. The utility that they have, not only just removing a ton of different debuffs, but I feel like a lot of people overlook the utility of G slots. So with their switch ability, being able to generate those G slots and then also enhance the multiplier of them to make them basically matching slots is a really big thing, because if the enemy has that effect where they take less damage from certain types of slots, I've never seen one of those debuffs that specifically target G slots, meaning that Nami and Karina's switch effect can pseudo enable you to get around damage reduction based on a certain slot, because they just don't remove it from G slots, which is just really crazy. So Nami, Karina, used in a ton of different teams. They get access to some pretty decent supports overall. Karina's got a couple, Nami has got a handful as well, so it's hard to really argue with Nami, Karina, and how good they actually are overall. Obviously the dupe dropping is fantastic, so like Nami and Karina, they're just one of the best design legends that have ever come out in Treasure Cruise history, and we don't really need to talk about it, but hey, you know, their rumble is very disruptive as well. And as for the final four, these are untouched, basically. These characters are still here. We have Kaido versus Luffy, which is still one of the best legends in the game, honestly. We've got the 10th anniversary Shanks, the 10th anniversary Ace, and of course, good old Zoro and Sanji. Now, some people may disagree with, like, Shanks being in here. I don't think anyone disagrees with Ace being in the top 5. I don't think anyone disagrees with Zoro and Sanji being in the top 5. Heck, even being top 1. So, again, nothing is really going to be shifting too much in terms of the top brackets here. So, it is what it is. We just have to wait and see what they have planned, because as it stands right now, if they keep going down this route of aiming to make each major celebration one separate team, like pull for all of these handful of characters to build XYZ team, that's not really going to shift the meta a ton, because once that campaign period ends, like once all this stuff leaves, like are the 5 elders going to be used? I don't know, probably not, honestly. It's kind of crazy to think about, man. But like this whole like flexibility thing is like they're all really in on making you build around these tag mechanics. And while the tag mechanics, like they do have cool functions, the fact that we have the lack of tags is the thing. They really want you to pull for these new units when there's a ton of old characters, you know, heck, like 3,000 to 4,000 other characters in the game that don't have tags yet, and they just refuse to give them tags to add further flexibility to these new characters. If these new characters had more characters that you could abuse these tags with, heck, maybe people would actually pull for them. I don't know, just saying. That's going to wrap it up from me, though. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about this down below in the comment section. Let me know your top 5 characters in One Piece Treasure Cruise as of November 2025. I hope you enjoyed this video, though. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But other than that, guys, I will see you guys within the next video.